Next up, it is our pleasure to an honor to invite Nathalie de Vries, founding partner, MVRDV, Rotterdam, Netherlands, to deliver the keynote session. She's here, and as the DV and MVRDV founding partner, Nathalie de Vries has led many successful MVRDV projects with the focus on the invention of new building typologies and the creation of changeable open systems. De Vries combines her work for MVRDV with a position as Professor of Architectural Design and Public Building at the Faculty of Architecture at TU Delft. The central theme in her research, design and construction of public buildings and public space is multiplicity in design. And in 2021, the municipality of Groningen appointed De Vries to the position of city architect. In this role, De Vries advises on current urban design and architectural projects and brings spatial issues to the floor in order to improve the city's physical living environment and building culture. The topic is going to be MVRDV Triple D's data, density, and diversity. Welcome, Nathalie, to our summit, and over to you. We're looking forward to a wonderful session ahead. I think you have to
Thank you. Yeah, muting. Oh, it's a classical Zoom mistake. Thank you for this wonderful, enthusiastic introduction. It's a pleasure for me to talk to you all today. And I've been listening in to the previous session also a little bit. And as also a part-time educator, I can totally confirm what many of the panelists say, that for me, education is also a way to educate, is also a way to educate myself as a practitioner. So that's incredibly important for me as well. I'm going to share my screen very fast with you today. And I hope it's all right now. Can you see me, please? Moderator, can you confirm?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, that's great. So then I can continue. Indeed, well, the theme of the summit is a very holistic one, and we're already entering metaverse soon, or bringing it back to the universe, indeed. And I was thinking, well, there's so many themes of this summit that also are important for our work at MVRDV. So why not try to be very inclusive in my presentation as well? So therefore, I chose the topic of data, density, and diversity as some of the main drivers of our designs in many places. Actually, we are an office that started in Rotterdam. And in the meantime, we've opened offices in other cities as well, like Shanghai, Paris, Berlin, as you can see here. And our very colorful Rotterdam core offices are today also the background of my Zoom screen. So first, the three Ds, the triple Ds for my title: data. Why is data so important for architecture? Well, obviously. Image I often show, it's everywhere, it's in everything, we are using it, it's also partly using us, so we have to be critical about it as well. But whatever happens, it's part of our life. Also, a wonderful image I often use, it is also in our construction world already very much. And to the right of this image, you see future-proof design and construction, designing with materials and methods of the future. It's an important aspect of that. So as a designer, I'd like to talk about that as well today. But we are, of course, fully aware that we are in a data-driven world already. And hopefully it helps to improve our construction world, because I must say, it's a conservative world and it is often lagging behind. It's hard to change. It's hard to change standard ways of working. Now, our office started 28 years ago, and from the first moment on, thinking about information and incorporating it into our designs has been a very important aspect for us. It's maybe a wish for this pragmatism also that I think Martha was talking about. Let's be honest and be truthful to all the information we are using as designers to include and to make our designs better. And of course, we are really in it nowadays. This is just a screen of showing all the, for example, scripting tools that we use in our office as well. And it needs permanent education of our employees, as I also heard was an important theme before, also inside our office. Because none of us, I wasn't even in my student years using the computer, only in the very last moment it popped up. And there's many generations of older architects that haven't even been introduced to it. And nowadays we have generations where, well, I guess even toddlers already have screens in their hands today. So it's a really rapid paradigm shift we are dealing with, but it gives us wonderful opportunities as well. The second D of density. Why do we have to think about density? Well, the Netherlands is a densifying country. That's probably how it started. But we know, of course, that the majority of the world's population is nowadays living in cities. And how can we make our lives agreeable and nice? And yeah, cities are maybe only occupying 2% of the total land. However, they are they're producing our wealth. That's good, one could say. It's a sustainable way of using our land. They also consume, of course, a lot of energy. Now the things are not getting as blue and green anymore. Cities also produce a lot of waste. Building industry is producing a lot of waste. And yeah, the Glasgow Summit has just ended. Cities, but also the construction industry is unfortunately producing a lot of greenhouse gas emission. And we as designers can play a role in limiting that to a large extent. So there is our responsibility. But also, when we think about cities, they are growing, they are sprawling. We have to think about, of course, how we can make life better for those who are living in cities. And not just be planners and how are we gonna build 20,000, 30,000 million homes more, but how can we make sure that people live in a nice way in these places as well? And we need governments to support that as well, as the UN Habitat Director also said at this conference. I always show this image in my lectures. So that means we have to think inclusive about our designs. We shouldn't limit ourselves just to 4 walls and a roof. We should think about materialization, about energy, about maybe creating cycles. So as Imagineers of the future in 2000, we built this then still hypothetical pavilion at the World Expo, which nowadays already looks a bit out of time in a funny way, because a lot of things we did there that seem to be spectacular are nowadays common practice, with high green on buildings and energy producing buildings. The third D is diversity that I want to show in my little lecture, and diversity is also for me personally an incredible important topic. We are all humans. We all have our needs, common needs, individual needs. We need to think about the needs of those who can't speak for themselves. And I'm very happy that, for example, my office, this is just a small selection of images, includes a little bit the world, although most of them are architects. So yes, no. In any case, they are from very different nationalities and backgrounds and genders. So that's where we can begin to see if our offices, our architects' offices, are representative for society as a whole. And then, only then, we can reach, of course, the incredible diverse ambitions that these 17 Sustainable Development Goals also express so well. This is things that we all have to deal with, which are all part also of our built environment. So as architects, we can be part of imagining that future. And to change the future, you have to begin yourself with your own practice, of course. So thinking about the diversity of the community that will inhabit our projects is very important for us. This is a project from a longer time already ago, but you can see here expressed the different types of people with different incomes living together here in Amsterdam. also means that you just don't look at the outside of building, but also think about who's living inside of them. This is just a small collection of the interiors. We always like to sneak and peek into our own buildings again after they are finished. It was already mentioned before also in the panel. Starting my lecture, I would like to talk about communities. And I have 4 different groups of projects that I want to show you today to illustrate our thoughts. As MVRDV, we're not just architects, we're also planners, urbanists. And I'm gonna move through some of our projects, always with the data, diversity, density topic in the back of our minds. I think a very important topic today is, of course, resiliency. And we were very happy to be part of a manifestation or organization project for the San Francisco Bay Area, together with this incredible team of landscape architects, urbanists, traffic consultants, and many more, digital people. And it's important because there actually we came up with the idea for the Bay Area community to maybe create a catalog of possibilities of which the community around the Bay Area, where San Francisco is part of, could make their own selections of facilities. And what was the goal of it? Actually, the Bay Area is suffering from many disaster-prone stuff. We know, of course, there can be earthquakes there, but there's also threat of sea level rising. There's also sometimes too much water coming from rainfall. They have fires, and the idea was to develop a catalog of facilities, because there's also poverty in the area as well. And San Francisco is now one of the most expensive cities in the world, but there's also therefore a lot of commuting to cheaper areas and from cheaper areas in the Bay. It's all quite vulnerable. It's just this one highway around the Bay that you can see here. And our idea was, let's make more connections and let these connections be made together with the population of the different communities living around the Bay Area. And at the same time, these new connections could help to make the whole area more resilient against climate change, against poverty, and all these kind of things. So basically, we wanted to devise a network of connectors and collectors. Connectors between people, more different modes of transport, to not to just be relying on the car and the one highway. When there's one crack in this highway, nobody can get anywhere anymore. But also collectors to collect the water and move it downwards in a better way. But also maybe together they form a way to escape maybe to the water in times of disaster. And all these new connections could also be exactly those points where we could make new community facilities that through this communication with the population, we could select together. And so you can see that the whole system of water collection, connecting of people could handle and deal and make a whole area more resilient against disaster and climate change. So altogether, on the one hand, as designers, we are designing then a systemic way of thinking, learning, in fact, from digital networks, of course, to make sure that there are much more shortcuts and ways out of and in of the system, and at the same time offer possibilities for communities to intervene and to select their own facilities around these new networks. This is really huge scale design. So here you see some of those communities around the city of San Francisco. Another thing with communities and diversity and the digital, we've experienced in the past year when we were invited to make a master plan for this area in Kansas City. we were invited by the Office of Port, who have a wonderful track record in very interactive design, community-based design processes. And they invited us, but it was also during all kinds of lockdowns. We were not able to travel, and but also there locally, the people weren't allowed to meet up a lot of the time. And I show this project because I think in the previous one, the resiliency against disaster and water and flooding is something which is a global problem. And the same is for this area called Armourdale in Kansas, which is completely surrounded by industry, has a problem with poverty and negligence. And that's also something we find worldwide for cities today. And there's also, again, the risk of flooding. You can see this big river surrounding it. So it was once developed as a nice kind of worker area for the factories to make sure that the laborers and the managers had a home. But it turned out to become a very isolated place, and the industry became much more important. And the people were more or less left behind. Even their relationship with the river was completely neglected. So this is all sort of the diagram of what was happening there, and you can imagine maybe that it led to extreme difficulties as well. So how to deal with this? So the neighborhood that is sort of completely enclosed and bordered and almost strangled by the industrial complex, leading to a lot of poverty. On the other hand, a community with a very strong identity and still a strong cohesiveness also that you can make use of when you work in the area. And what can we add as designers to this issue? So we investigated actually what are all the issues that have to be dealt with and have to be solved in some way. And can we help to stimulate it by organization of space, but also empowering people to get out of this deadlock situation there. And the most important is, of course, talking with the community. So it's also something that we somehow in education, I think, have to make sure that it also finds a place to engage yourself, to talk to people on site, to get to know the people you're working for and with. And in this case, it was done through many different channels with outreach teams on site, with surveys, websites, workshops, talking to community leaders, interviewing people, making them fill out all kinds of forms that were given and spread in the community. And we also organized all different kinds of workshops about public health and safety. This is about how the public sector, how the government is still present in an area or not. Economics with the local entrepreneurs, but also with different groups of young families, aging people, different focus groups. And we used wonderful techniques like Miro boards to have online workshops as well. Sometimes there were markets where people from ports could go to, but we also did it online in small groups, gathering information, talking together, trying to visualize their problems as well for them, and in using colorful diagrams and photographs and all kinds of modes of communication. And the things and the conclusions, I think in many places are important. Reconnect, don't forget us, reprogram, empower us. What's going on in this area? We need more clarity from the government. We need more interaction. We need green, of course, and safety, public space, community cohesion. How can you do that in a design? And what is very interesting, I think, is we come from an age where we have divided all functions in cities a lot, industry on one hand, living on the other. But maybe it's time also to think again about productive cities and make interaction between work and living important again, because we can be productive in producing our own green and our own, take care of our own green in the community, like on the left, on a smaller scale, help to build our own homes and empower people to do so by giving simple structures. We can also help people to develop, to have this kind of workshop-like situations in neighborhoods as well, to educate people and learn jobs. And the big stuff, we can use it as well, maybe for energy, for example, raising energy on these big factory halls there, and using the floodplains for recreation, because they're not always flooded. And identifying the voids literally in the community. We need public spaces. We need to rebuild on important spots in a community like this. We have to identify that and make sure that people not just make new buildings, but also new public spaces. And when you create housing projects, that there's also places to meet in front of that. This is a wonderful example that Port came with. So from segregation to integration, and creating like a thriving buffer zone, this dark yellow, around the community where actually labor and living interact again. Make bridges and connections, invest in public space. Indeed, also the connectors and collectors in the circles on the waterfront, include the waterfront in the community. It can be used most of the time as a wonderful park. And then suddenly something which is like a backside becomes almost like a front side of a city again. But this is something which works on so many different interactive levels with so many different specialists working together. Can't even begin to visualize it. I guess the best visualization will be in some years when the community starts to become a function better again. Moving on to dwelling, another scale is also something I'd like to show to you, because that's also an important place where our growing world population, data-driven design, and density come together, of course. So data-driven design for us also means that we are more and more able as designers to include important elements of our daily life, not just through consultancy, but also in our own design process, as part of how we create and densify neighborhoods for many of our projects. And I'm going to show one, for example, now in France. It's in Bordeaux, Île-aux-Quéries. We worked, for example, with the data that you need to optimize densification. In many cities, we have, of course, the importance of dealing with sun and light in the street, and at the same time, we're upping our programs more and more. Well, maybe you could also use it in a different way, because I think in some areas of the world, we also need shading, of course, and not just nonstop sun. So this is an interesting parameter that should be very localized when it's in use. But you can see how we, through different techniques in our offerings and applying different data sets, start to shape our environment with sun hours, with sun spots, with aims and goals, how to deal with sun and how to create buildings that better cater that. So on a practical level, for example, we did it on this large site in Bordeaux. Our office made a master plan for this former railroad yard with factories and some housing as well. And then you see how the different layers of data we're now putting in, it's the original French presentation. See how we can start to build buildings on the former tracks. We take out spaces to also have public spaces. We reconnect it to the streets and the context. Then we just start with a kind of massing, as if we start to create a model. Rough blocks are put on, and then we start to carve it out to get enough light on the streets, on all the buildable areas. Of course, there's existing buildings included. We even put on minimum daylight measurements. We contextualize to get views and context to include the existing buildings as well and give way to specificities. 144 architects will be invited to create a really colorful, diverse scheme to fit into the master plan. And of course, we don't make massive buildings, but we're also opening it up for air and light inside as well. And we'll add a lot of solar panels and some other ways of making natural creating energy, and green roofs also can be an important aspect of the designs as well. Not to mention underground, the water collection as well. So that leads to sort of, manipulations of massing and careful studies of all kinds of these aspects in the sections. But it also leads to actually new data-driven design of architecture. So you see to the right in this image, there's still this classical way of making setbacks to get light into the streets. But we now can build even much more by creating this sort of iceberg-like volumes, which leads also to all kinds of nice different apartments in the complex. And you get sections like these. Get rid of the cars, important always, but also make sure there's enough cover on the car parks to have green courtyards as well. As you can see here, there are, for example, in this block, of which we are also the architects, there are different types of apartments, including almost half of them affordable housing. There's a parking, a shop, and a rooftop restaurant as well in the glassed parts. We're opening up the blocks. You start to see the diversity, but you don't start to see who paid what for his house and in what financial structure. So that's also very, very important. And we make a lot of collective spaces as well. So some of the entrances and gates become playgrounds and covered meeting spaces in the project as well. So data, diversity, density coming together. And in another project in another city in France, Rennes, the capital of Brittany, some of the same measurements, densification, but at the same time allowing views through and across the project, making as much as possible outdoor spaces here and balconies and green. Again, a mixture of different financial categories, from social to mid-income and regular. Expressive shaping that leads to a very big diversity of floor plans and layouts and different types of amounts of bedrooms, from 1 bedroom to 5 bedrooms, for example. I'm not going to go through all these steps in the design, but again, this sort of shaping with information is an important aspect of how we create these buildings. They're also wrapped around an existing little hall on this canal. It's close to the downtown of Rennes, a historical place. And here you see how actually everybody in the project will have a wonderful view, have a balcony, no front or back rows here in this project. And again, this permeability with collective open void spaces, which always allow a fantastic place also to meet, to organize a neighborhood or a block party or meeting as well. So it's just void spaces, but they allow, and it's under construction right now, as you can see, a nice public waterfront, of course, it's not privatized here. Allow for little places to meet in your project. Moving to a different continent in the States, a project for the San Francisco Giants, their parking lot being converted with different architects. Here it is actually a couple of months ago. It's already much further ahead in the same Bay area. Indeed, a flood park in front of it now to prevent it from being flooded. 4 architects, studio gang coordinating, Henning Larsen, Work Accolade, and us with the reddish building in the front tower. But we opened it up, we carved it out. There's offices in it as well in the plinth and retail, but also at the heart and at the roofs, places to meet and to talk to each other. Again, with different floor plan types for different types of people, also affordable. This is very important for the San Francisco Giants. They say all our fans should be able to live in this complex. So it's really something that the client should also take care of and include in the programming. So this one's under construction. I'm not going to talk about it too long, but it's also very mixed with a plinth of retail, some offices, living all together in a quarter. And yes, we also made a project in India. We made several projects in India, a lot of them about public space. But this one is for housing in Pune. This is the building. There will be some more, I think, in the future. As you can see, quite a particular organization. And the original master plan asked for a couple of towers, which we thought was pretty isolated way of living. So we devised a way whereby we could create a bit more, even with tall buildings, a sense of community in the area. And we also talked with the client about, again, the mixture. And I think the different colors represent the size of the apartment. And we started to negotiate it, and the marketing team of the project also helped to diversify and mix and mingle. Because I think if you mix and mingle different housing sizes, you also get different kind of people in your buildings. So here are eight apartments, but they're all very different in size. So you can imagine that different types of people, like singles and couples and families and extended families, would be all living in this particular part of the building, for example. And you also notice, of course, it's put on top of a car park. There's some half enclosed plazas and facilities, but there are also these openings in the project, these sort of collective living rooms, because if we make a building so large, it doesn't really help just to make a couple of openings on the lower levels. We really wanted to integrate them as well on the higher level. So you will be able to meet some of the people from your surroundings and area in particular places, which also have different functions, like collective living rooms in the project, including, of course, some playgrounds, some places to meet and talk. And also, again, at the lower levels, there's some nice outdoor design here, but there's also covered spaces like this one here, where you can see a class moving towards the playgrounds. Yeah, just a place to sit and meet and hang around in the shade, of course, as well. So you can see here how this building is. Yeah, we have everybody has balconies as well. Things we try to get in every project all around the world. I'm continuing. I'm a bit behind schedule, so somebody should give me a bit of a sign on the app how much time I still have left. I just keep on talking.
Not an issue, Nathalie. I'll do that. Please continue.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'm in the third part. I think we also have to talk about work in another way. We had in Armourdale, of course, already the industrial, let's say re-industrialization, bringing work in a nicer way back into the community, having workplaces for everyone. Many of us are also office workers, of course. And so much has changed also in the way we are thinking about work. It has been in the past, but it has even been accelerated in the past 2 years. We were very happy to make this building to the right called Werk 12, which is like an office workers club in a way. Office workers club, you could say, to liven a neighborhood near a station in Munich, where there will be a lot of offices built, but also a lot of housing built. But you also need to relax and enjoy and have offices in a different context. And this building tries to cater for that. You can see a very open structure that we designed, an open way of building. We think that's one of the most sustainable way of building in the future, where we can incorporate many different types of functions, including offices, event spaces. And we even know, of course, there will be different floor to ceiling heights there. So we suggest sometimes to take this double height as the point of departure and put other functions in more as infills that you can remove. You have different lifespans in the construction of a building. This is really the open building system. And it can still be very fun. So it looks, it's kind of rough and ready in a way, but it can also be a lot of fun if what's happening inside is really showing off and buzzing on the outside. This is a building with even multiple points of entries. Yeah, so these are the infills I was talking about, almost like pieces of furniture for functions that need some closing off in the bigger spaces. We have a point of entry, which is kind of a gallery, but there's also the escape routes are also alternative entry points so that you can really access the building from all kinds of different sites. Well, and the sports inside, like I said, offices, swimming pool, restaurants. So it's a really neutral floor plan with columns and these galleries. And each floor, like the ground floor, of course, has 2 floors because there's the basic floor and the infill on top of it. All with the idea that it can also be flexible again at some point. Just continuing, we even managed to include a swimming pool in the equation. And of course, it is also an attractive building where maybe the people who will be living and working in the area will meet and come and are coming together to also offer space for the nicer things and the relaxing things of life. It's like a kind of commercial community center, one could say. You've of course been noticing all these letters. It's part of our original competition design. And 2 artists, Engelman and Engel, said, well, it reminds us of actually what you see in Donald Duck, these sort of noises that are sometimes made. And why not include that on the facade? Because it's like a universal language. And it's really, it's really wonderful to have that now in our design. And we collaborate a lot with artists because we think, on the one hand, we try to be very basic and neutral and transformable in our designs, but we also need joy and fun in our lives. And often the artists and designers that we collaborate with and the colorful and the use of color, a very simple and a very cheap way of making life more nice, are part of our designs. So second working building I'd like to show you is this one, which starts in Wrocław in Poland, on an island where the Nazis in the Second World War retreated and used it as a kind of bastion. So everything was broken down and shut down, and there's just ruins left in the middle of the city for a long, long time, until we were asked to deal with this one of the last remaining fragments of a building, which, by the way, contained fantastic street art at the same time. And adding to that a commercial program of collective co-working spaces, restaurants, and meeting places. And at the same time, making giving sort of acknowledge the fact that it's also really a central meeting place in the city as well. So not closing it off. I mean, in a way, an office is a closed shop, no, for those who are not working there. But in this case, all the pink areas are retail, are cafes and meeting spaces where there will always be people entering. And we did that on both sides, the new and the old part of the building. You see a bit on the roof here how we opened that up. At the bottom, a new hall where you see the old and the new. This is an event space, and on the other hand, our new part with fantastic rooftop cafe, green roof, and a wonderful space to eat and drink. Yeah, co-working offices, very important. I think nowadays many of us are freelancing or working alone, but we also like to meet again. So the whole co-working is becoming ever more important in the city, and finding places for that. But also, a social place. So you work there, you drink a coffee together, and you meet not just indoor, but outdoor as well. Here you see a bit the island situation. And at night, actually, the youth takes over of Wrocław. So at daytime, people work there. At the nighttime, people have a lot of fun there as well. And you might have noticed again, here's an artist, Alicia Biala, a young artist from Poland, who made incredible fresco-like paintings. Partly incorporating the history of Wrocław, but also imaginary animals and the river and all these kind of things inspired her, and she painted it by herself in an incredible way, which is really the lively heart of the building. And I also like to emphasize, and because of diversity, here she is sitting again on the left, Alicia, but next to her, my partner and project leader, Fokke Morel, that's me. Then you have the mayor, and then you have our client, Eva Völkel, who came up with the whole concept of this building as well, together with us. An all-female building team there from client and designer part. That's wonderful. And the presenter was a guy again. And isn't it often the other way around? So it was incredible fun to work on it like that as well. A third office building in Colombo. I thought I have to show you this as well. We worked in Sri Lanka on a new office building in an area that's rapidly transforming. There's still some of the old remains, a factory owned by the family of our client that transformed it partly in this nice area to go out as well. But there's also all these towers popping up in the city at the same time. And so what we did is we tried to connect with our scheme these alleyways with the new nice activities to the new building we also put on site, but also save space as much as possible because of, now there's still a lot of green. And we thought in our site, we have to find spaces for that as well, again. And we had an interesting discussion. It's hot in Colombo, but I've also liked including daylight and fresh air a lot and opening windows in offices. And there's also was the issue of car park. So client helped us to make sure that we could shrink the building so that we still have some public space. We made a nice plaza here in front, but we also incorporated, that's what you see whirling around this building. Here we have the groundbreaking. We've at the right, the Mater Familias, who was an important critic during the whole process. I mean, nothing would go ahead if she wouldn't agree to what we were doing. Managed to get in, we incorporated this plaza on the right in front, but also big trees all around the site and not completely filled up with building. The client introduced a rooftop as well. And on the first levels, we have some car park also on the ground. But we designed it in such a way that it also can be converted to offices once the car is less in use. So the floor to ceiling height is higher. Currently, we green it, but it's all ready for transformation. And then you see, of course, this closer and opener parts of the building. Oh yeah, you see the ground floor and the greenery that we added. And it's, again, a lot of artists and architects inside involved, making these wonderful artworks and interiors. Here you see the office floor currently used as car park. That's how I would like to label it, of course, and the provisions for the green. And each office, this is the rough, unfinished version, with a lot of opportunities to still also open and to create maybe verandas, not to be totally reliant on air conditioning every hour of the day, and indeed outdoor facilities as well, which could also be this sort of co-working space again that we have, and a building that also communicates at night, of course, and is lively for the neighborhood as well. Right, and some other images from the context. I'm moving on to the last buildings. Again, I'm just continuing until somebody stops me.
Nathalie, there are a question or two from the audience. So probably you can wind up in another 5 minutes and then Parth will pose the questions to you.
Okay, I will do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Last but not least, I'm going to talk about some public projects. One in Seoul, where really in the heart of the city, across the tracks, but also highways, a piece of highway was actually taken out by the city and said, we're going to just take that out and transform that from a car-infested place to a place where people can bridge this incredible gutter of infrastructure. And my colleague Winnie designed this whole wonderful park on top of it, which acts like a sort of nursery for plants in the city. A nursery of plants, and when they have grown enough, they will be put in other places in the city. It's like a catalog of local vegetation, and there's all kinds of pavilions. And the design was basically the park and all the elements to get up and about and around this place. And it has, like, of course, its big ancestor, the the High Line, an incredible, powerful impact on all the real estate in the surroundings. But also you suddenly see that people are living there actually in that area, and they're not in their cars, they're not shoved aside on the streets, but they're taking over in a wonderful way. And through these new connections, this whole area is sort of revitalized, and from just being offices and shops and people living on the outside of this, they are back in the center of attention. Of course, the green is fantastic as well, adding shade and better conditions for living in the middle, in the heart of a huge city, and with water as well, and also safe at night and accessible as well. And the French had this saying in the 60s that under the pavement is the beach. Under the pavement is the beach, and the revolution started. But under these pavements are actually we actually moved it around now. No, the beach is floating above the streets. It's in the sky. And again, community building is incredibly important. So I was talking about mixing people, different types of people in buildings. And in this community in Denmark, in Copenhagen, the community said, well, we're going to densify. There will be lots of new people living here, but there's also people from the really old neighborhood and from the 70s, and there's all kinds of, there's workers. Let's build a community center right in the middle of that. And this is the community center and a park, and there's a car park underneath. And in this community center, it's all dedicated to healthy living for your mind and your body. There's different kinds of programs inside. There's a bit of a startup place. There's a kitchen, communal kitchen and cafe. You can play there. It's very dark in Copenhagen already at 4 o'clock in the winter. So children can go inside. People can meet. You can have yoga classes. You can move. It's also important. Climb, have fun. So all the people in this community from different backgrounds will be meeting each other inside and outside, with a small amphitheater as well. So the building is really interactive, one could say. Exciting, promoting also healthy food and movement is important, because so many people have issues nowadays with their weight and with moving not enough. This is just on a Saturday. On a weeknight, on Tuesdays, it looks, of course, completely different when people come in for classes and yoga and whatever. And it really acts again as a kind of central meeting point with markets and, well, fun. Last building, the depot, it opened last week. Hybrid building, actually, hybrid public building. We have a wonderful museum in Rotterdam. You can see it here above in the drawing, and the long thing is the architecture archive. And next to it is a park. But the museum had a big problem. All their Rembrandts and Van Goghs and Salvador Dali's were in the basement with flooding all the time. We have also climate change problem, rain, groundwater coming up. There's like €1 billion crisis there. And with the help of the public sector and private collectors, a new archive building had to be made, but the museum director had a wonderful idea to turn it into an archive you can actually visit and use. And we also introduced a rooftop, accessible rooftop to it as well. So in the basis is, of course, a very close buildings with archival spaces that have to be very safe and climate proof, so that the art is protected. But we also opened up the heart for a wonderful Wunderkammer, place of miracles. Here you see the whole thing under construction, heavy, heavy, heavy stuff. Not gonna go into that. Opened last week, Fridays, 8 days ago, by our king. There he is, looking up at himself maybe, because the whole building has a mirrored facade to mirror the city, to mirror the park. So it has to, it's a very big fat building, but because it's mirroring, it also sort of absorbs and opens and is almost away. Also, again, dreaming, entering through doors that open like a James Bond movie, like, to both sides. And then you enter into an artwork already go up a little bit, and then you look up, and then there's this sort of Pyrenean feeling there, with partly glass floors and lots of objects from the depots exposed and ever changing. You can walk or wander around. You see temporary exhibitions. People can show, and collectors are also putting their art in there. But you also look into the depots, actually. That's amazing. Now you see suddenly the enormous treasures in the museum. And when you put on a white coat and get in a tour, you can actually be taken into the archive and see what's going on there, and get explanation from the people in the museum that are maybe restoring the art. And you can have a look at that as well. And you just see the Rembrandt and I don't know what, like the billions of euros hanging there, but also seeing it. There's areas for events as well. There's a nice restaurant on top, and every evening after 5 o'clock, everybody can go into the building for free to visit the rooftop and enjoy the views over Rotterdam. And of course, there are trees there, trees that are specially grown to survive here on the high level. Again, with the mirror effect to even amplify this feeling. And there's a nice new artwork on the outside, also making use of the reflections by Pipilote Risk, also started last week. Wonderful projections. And to end the circle, the full circle maybe, is also what was opening is an exhibition about our own archive. First 400 project numbers are stored in the architectural archive next to the depot, actually, also the Architecture and Design Museum Institute. They are looking at our work because we are one of the first born digital offices, and they want to know how to archive that and how it influenced our design. So in the design, you can sneak peek into the archive boxes. Our models are dusted off, but there's also conversations with the archivists and curators present. You can see sketches and details of our designs, early models, and also talking about things like I was talking about to you in my lecture today. But also the old data archives are used for some new interactive installations. So you can basically design your own MVRDV project now, like we are using our own digital past as well in our own work. So, and all this interweaving of drawing and model making and conversations and data driven here at the front. That's what will be my last image now. Is our very first project we ever did together. In front, this high rise with a lot of diversity inside, with a lot of diagrams we made. So back to where I began this morning, actually. And thank you very much for listening to me today.
Thank you very much for this lovely presentation. I really enjoyed looking at some of your projects, especially the one from Pune. I would probably like to go there and visit sometime. And if they stop me at security, I'll say I know Nathalie, so please allow me. So thank you so much. And we've got a couple of questions here because we've got so many students also present. One of the students is asking you if someone wants to probably work at your studio, what do you look for in a profile and how can they?
Of course, we are using the internet for that and our website. So if this person goes to our website, he will find a way for interns, how to apply, and what we ask of you to do so for anyone who is looking for job opportunities or internships. You can just follow a couple of steps.
Lovely, lovely. So that was wonderful. And there were so many comments flowing in that I think I'm lost in the barrage of comments. But the one thing that stood out was the lovely, lovely architecture that you showed, because there's so many monotonous buildings that we see sometimes, which are just even and boring, but you showed some mix and match and so many different diversities that I really enjoyed. And I hope people can take a leaf out of that and replicate that in their own areas. So thank you so much for doing that. I'm just going to move on. And Apurva, if you want to come in, you can please say your comments if you have. Apurva, are you here?
Yeah, I'm very much here. Okay, I'll let Mr. Yes, Mr. Anil Banwari. Probably he has questions.
No. Parth, can you take these questions? I'm in the office. I have a meeting going on right now. Apurva, can you take the questions? If you have them, or Parth, can you take them? I'll step in a few minutes. I have a vendor over at the office.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, Nathalie, it was wonderful to see your works, and as Parth also elaborated, it's probably when I'm in Pune, I'll also love to go and visit the project. Okay, so I also wanted to check, since the theme of our summit is designing the new world order, and we have focused on the themes of society, education, technology, inclusivity, and diversity. And these are all aspects which you are closely associated with. So I'm very keen to know, how do you see these aspects transforming in this new world order that we are talking about?
Well, I think in our office from the beginning, we were very much interested in the social aspect of our building. So I think this is something that you can always include very well in every design. As you can see, we even negotiate these spaces to meet and to diversify our programs in projects that we make for commercial clients. So not just for governments or institutions. But that's let's say a personal responsibility that architects and designers can take. But we also notice now that there's really a paradigm shift going on in construction. I cannot simply go on building the way I've been taught to build. This is not a sustainable way of continuation. So we are really in the process of transforming ourselves as an office also into be more critical in how we make our designs. So we use, of course, the help of data and scripting and all kinds of tools to be more sophisticated in dealing with the context, for example, and the positioning of buildings. But it's also about materiality. So at the moment, one of the teams in my office, we have like an investigative research team, and we merged actually the data specialist with the sustainable specialist, and they're developing something called the Carbonscape, which is monitoring the production of green gas as we are designing. So what are you actually doing here? Like, can we make sure that already during our design things are being improved in a sustainable sense? It's also about what materials you use. It's about thinking even more about future use and transformation of buildings. It's using every surface possible, including roofs, to be productive. That's what I call now, what I tell my students is multiplicity in design. It's really a multi-layered attitude towards every aspect and element that we touch with our designs. Never something just as one meaning. Can it be made productive? Can it be broken down again? So this is something that maybe the current user or owner isn't always aware of, but the discussion in Colombo with the client, hey, if we make the car park a little higher, if we put in the openings already, maybe it's not the right moment yet to take out the car of this project, and it won't be feasible at the moment, but there will be a future in which the car will be gone, and then you can start to use the other part of the building as well for offices. So this is simple things that don't even necessarily take so much effort, but which can make buildings, for example, already much more future-proof.
So Apurva, I'm going to step in and ask Nathalie a follow-up question. So are your clients, is the push coming for your clients to do sustainable construction and sustainable design? Or is that coming from your side, Nathalie? Anil Banwari here.
I'd like to say that it's a collaboration, but I noticed a lot at the moment, and with the rising building prices, it's terrible. There's a big problem of the current value of real estate and project and the building costs, and sometimes the investments that we have to make. So we have to somehow find a way how to capitalize investments in the future in a better way, and find ways to design and make buildings that are sometimes cheaper as well. So I think we're still a bit sometimes in a vicious cycle of the short-term return on investment and the long-term vision. But we are very lucky. We can be critical, of course, and we start a dialogue with our clients. And I think by now you must have lived somewhere under a stone to not understand that what we are doing right now has an incredible impact on the future and on the future generations on our planet. So I see it as a collective responsibility.
Yeah, but
it's not an answer. It's not a solution yet. So it starts with awareness. It starts with what can I do? What can I bring? And we have to have the discussion like, do we really want to proceed like this? Are we really going ahead with this?
And even if this means higher cost, you've got clients as diverse as Colombo to Kansas City. So I'm just concerned that, in Colombo, I thought price would be the deciding factor, lower cost. And when you're doing sustainability, at times it means higher cost.
No, well, yes and no. No, well, a little bit higher floor to ceiling height is maybe a little bit more expensive. But I think in the end, what we did added to the value of the building. So maybe it has some really nice tenants now as well. So no, I think we had a client that was really coming to us and say, help me to get a solution for this problem. There's not a limitless amount of money, not at all. But having the dialogue about openable windows, the car park issue, and the fact that the owner of the building accepted that we actually made a smaller building than was possible on the plot to add a plaza, to add green. I think the client really invested and accepted less revenues than were possible on the site. But in the long term, I think the value of such a building is getting higher than the ones that don't do these things.
Now, I'm also going to moving on to another topic. As a woman, you're one of the few women leaders in architecture in the Netherlands. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, there are many, but they're not always as visible as the male counterparts. But you're absolutely right. So for a long time, I sort of more or less denied gender. We're architects, we're doing our work. But I think I also learned over the long run that it's important. Our office, I think it's always a bit of it's shifting every now and then. Sometimes we have more women, sometimes more men, but it's important, again, start with your own workplace. I want to be out there as well to show other women that it's possible to have a place. But we also, I think it's important to see it's a crazy profession. In the talk before with the educators, it was also about, is it a way of life? It's a way of living, and it can be very absorbing. And in our office and in our profession and in the Netherlands, we had this discussion about, for everybody, men and women, the balance of life and work is incredibly important. So as an office, we also have to not push the boundaries too much in that concern. And it's not just for women who are, for some reason or another, always suffering a bit sooner or taking back earlier. But it's also now the men, the young men that have families and want to be also spending time with them, or maybe have a life outside of the office, take care of parents or have nice hobbies or whatever. So the work-life balance in a very intense profession like ours is important. And through the female gender issue, we actually came to the point that it's not just, and I think we have to show our faces, and it's a bit of a testosterone driven, the construction industry. Not always necessary. I think bringing in other groups and other voices is important, because we build for everybody. If you want to build an inclusive society, the ones who are building it and designing it should also be a representation of that same society.
What about alternative abilities? People with some sort of shortfall in abilities. It could be paraplegics, it could be blind, it could be visibly impaired. What about those people? Are they getting employment in architectural offices and design firms, or is that a bit of a challenge?
Yes, we have in the Netherlands a very interesting regulation that if you build government projects or if you build in certain cities, you also have to invest in that as well. So that means that part of our fee has to go into employment. We have to prove employment in people with disabilities, for example. Is that what you're referring?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking
It's
about.
like a societal return
yeah.
that we have to prove. For example, for the depot, and it also opened our eyes because we had people entering the office that we didn't have before, and now it's become much more normal. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Inclusiveness is about every aspect of life.
That's lovely. Now, thank you so much, Anil, sir.
I have a question to ask. I've got a couple of questions. I know Nia Singh.
Yeah, we have a discussion with students as well, I believe. Wasn't there a student group lined up?
Anil, sir, if we could wait, we can take this offline because, and you're right, Nathalie.
Yeah, I'm Nathalie. I'll see you in Amsterdam I'm there in Amsterdam on the 30th of this month.
Okay, well, hope to meet you then.
Yeah, I think Netherlands and rest of the Scandinavian countries are really setting an example on the equality of opportunity front and inclusivity. So thank you so much, Nathalie, for coming here and sharing your views. And definitely students and others alike are really lucky to be hearing you speak about your projects and the modalities. Thank you so much.